Samech Vav, page started.
We saw that was the general hefresh between the luchas Rishonos and the luchas Achronos, and we compared that to the difference between Torah Shebiksav and the Torah Shebial Peh. The Torah Shebiksav, who beginners haklal the Torah, like we said earlier, the Chamisha Chumshe Torah, they how the Torah was beklolius, in klolim, in general rules, not going into all the detail, and we saw that the Yerida into the Protim was Davke, from a higher Madrega, Davke from the Koyach to be Mavarer, the Choisha, and the Helam which came from the Chet HaEgo and the other Chatoim, and that was the Maila of Torah Shebiksav, that was still in a even from Klal, but Davke because of that, it didn't go out into all the details. Therefore, it didn't come to the Madrega HaElyona and the higher Shoirish that we come through the usage of Torah Shebaal Peh Davka. Davka in Torah Shebaal Peh Nifratu HaProtiim Davka. We went down into all the minute details. Shehein b'Madrega Gavoya Yoser. Like we saw that they come. And they're the Indian of the Butzina, the Kaldunisa, the Kavamida, which comes from Moiches Timor, and that is a Madrega Eliana Yesa Bigdei Lavara Berudim. Alidea Berudim Davka, Alidei Zeh Davka. We see the word Davka occurs here several times, what the word Davka means precisely. In other words, there's no other way, as you might say. Alidea Berudim Davka, Alidei Zeh Davka. Magiyim LaMadrega Eliana Yesa. And that's what we saw, that Ein Nachanami, it's a great tirucha, as Rashi points out, that was given. Lahatrichon, v'tireach, v'yagia, an effort and struggle of a davke through that, both in the actual Madrega of Torah, we come to a higher Madrega, or that's the union of the Chochmas Timor, Moiches Timor, and also in Aveda and in Iskashras, or the Nishoma, with the Eibishter, we come to the Madrega of Ava, Rabbah, and that causes that in the Aveda Adamens there's also an unlimited power, which is Ava, Rabbah, that he's devoted. Telakus, even from Lamaila Mitanva, Vadas Lagamre, as Mavu in Tanya, Perik Mem Gimel, and Mem Dalet. Kamoy Kain, similar to that difference between Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebaal Peh, be Torah Shebaal Peh Gufa, in the Torah Shebaal Peh, what it's concerned with Chalda generally, with this whole Yerida into the Protim, in order to be Mavara the Choisha. In that itself, there's a difference. Yesh Hefresh Bozeh Bein Talmud Bavli Le Talmud Yerushalmi. But the Hashkoch Eliana brought about that after the generations of the Mishnah, and after the time of Rabbi Yehuda Anosi, Rabbi Yehuda Anosi, that gradually the Koyach of the Golos was so miskabel that eventually Yidden got divided into two great schools of Oisik in the Torah. Well, that was the Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael, and the Chachamim who went to Bavel, and that led to two great codifications of the Torah, how it is, the Torah Shebaal Peh, and all the details in Torah Shebaal Peh, in two great oifanim, and two great, as it were, collections of all the discussions and all the documents, Talmud Bavli and Talmud Yerushalmi. And it's well known that the Psak Din in Torah is that wherever there's a suffix and wherever we're not clear, if there's two opinions, both of the Yerushalmi and the Bavli, that we go according to the Bavli. Ultimately speaking, to us, to all Yidden, I say us, I mean all the Yidden in the latter part of the Golos, then the principal basis of all Psak Halacha is Talmud Bavli. It's only what there's no Machloikes, Bedova. Or there's a suffix in the Bavli what it really holds, but in the Yerushalmi it's written clearly an opinion, then we go according to the Yerushalmi. and in many inyonim, b'derech pnimius and b'derech haggadahs, then the Yerushalmi reveals to us all sorts of inyonim, because it was drawn up in Eretz HaKodesh. And as we'll see as we go along, there's a special Siyata Dishmaya, the limud in Eretz Yisrael, as the Medrash Rabbah tells us, that Ein Torah Keteres Eretz Yisrael. So therefore the principle in the two schools, but again to final decision and final psach halacha, is Talmud Bavli. Dehine b'Talmud Bavli ha'ikar hu apilpul b'ribi kushiyas v'helomes. Anybody who's tasted a bit of a Gemara, and he knows that the ikar learning in Talmud Bavli is b'derech pilpul. How do you call it? Sharp discussion. There's a one on the word pilpul is based on there's a word which is like a sharp vegetable, which is called a pilpil. As the foul pill, it means literally to discuss in a sharp way, back and forth. Beribui kushiyas, with many different kashas, behelomis. Now that's an unusual word. Literally hidings of the real truth, or hidings of the real knowledge of what's going to be the final issue. Helem. So with that, the Rebbe hints to the famous klal brought in Tanya by the Alter Rebbe in chapter 26 of Igeres HaKodesh, that the kashiyas that are asked in Talmud Bavli, and Beklal in learning in general, the inyan of kushiyas is a form of helem. In other words, that there are certain delicate forces which they really come from the forces of the Golas, and even to a certain extent in a delicate way to the forces of the Sitra Achra, what they cause that it's impossible to see and to know in halacha v'shabbat Torah at first glance. What prevents us from knowing that in first glance is a form of Helem v'Esther that comes mitzad the koyach of the Golas itself. And that's the inyan of Talmud Bavli, that it was Davki Bizman and B'mokim HaGolas. Eretz Yisrael, the Talmud Yerushalmi, was albeit in a Zman of Golas, but it was in the Mokim Giula, which is Eretz Yisrael, and had all the miles of being Be'eretz HaKodesh. The Ilu Talmud Bavli was mamish the Torah of the Golas, both B'mokim and Bizman. But there was the kushiyas, and the many and multitudinous kushiyas which occur in Talmud Bavli, they are a form of helem, and therefore he calls them kushiyas v'helomes. And we'll see about that more as we go along, that the etzem inyan of the Golas and certain factors which the Golas represents, the hainu, the fact that all inyanim of Kedusha were yoyreid into a certain what you might call imprisonment inside the grasp and the helem of the clippers. Therefore in Torah itself there's a form of necessity to struggle and to take away things which are mitzad the helem of the Golas, and they are the kushiyas, the things that interfere and, as it were, don't allow you to get to the emes straight away. And you have to ask a shaila, and then by being mataris that shaila, ad shabur araswaraha amitiyas, the through the kushiyas, but taking away the kushiyas and taking away those helems, then you come to the emes svara. Ashen kein Talmud Yerushalmi. The way of learning in Talmud Yerushalmi is not like that. Rubam heim halachis pesukais, believe pilpul. If you look carefully in the Talmud Yerushalmi, it's mostly statements which are followed one by the other. Occasionally there are questions asked, but they don't usually lead to long sugyas of pilpulim and counter kashas and counter stirras from other places, etc. Sometimes it's more like trying to work out, is that what he really said, or maybe he said something slightly different, or not kashas on the etzem concept and things of that nature. So therefore there are certain forms of discussion in the Talmud Yerushalmi, but it's more like a list of different halachas that are related to one topic. And therefore you have Masechtas and Mishnayos, similar to what you have in Talmud Bavli, but the way of learning and the way of discussion, and even the Lashon. Of course, the Lashon is mostly Lashon Kodesh, and it's different than the whole style and signon of the Talmud Bavli. And being as it is, majorly halachas pesuk is belief pilpul. The ikke in a pilpul, that whole inter-discussion structure, which we call pilpul, hu asher ha'asoga ha'rishoina shemasik bo inyan arehu makshe al zeh. What is the idea of pilpul? That you reach a first grasp. In other words, you've studied the details, you've examined the factors in the matter, and then you gain a first, what you might call a maskana, a first opinion as to how the matter is. But you ask on that akasha, Hari hu machshe al zeh ribui kushiyas. If he's a bright Talmud and a conscientious learner, then he doesn't ask just one kasha, but he asks ribui kushiyas. Shehein helomes v'hesteirim ala gilui oyer ha'asoga. Ad shebo legilui ha'asoga elyoina yoiser. So he says that he asks all these different kashiyas, and usually the kashiyas are from other sources or from other authorities, but they tend to contradict what we just reached our opinion. And then we have to struggle to show that they don't really contradict. Really, not a kasha, because that's really one Indian, that's another slightly different Indian, and therefore, if you really think of it carefully, that relates to another detail in another halacha, and this relates to another halacha, and then we reach a certain point where we say, oh, now we've settled that, and it seems to be settled. Then all of a sudden we'll ask a kasha from another source, or another brisa, or another statement of an Amora sometimes, which has already been accepted as a halacha in another place, and that tends to unbalance all that we just said after we'd asked numerous kashas on that. But once we ask all the kashas, then we come to the revelation of a soga elyoina, a higher soga. Now, why do we say higher? Higher doesn't necessarily mean that it's another hasoga to what we started with. It's basically the same hasoga. No, elyoina means clearer or more pure in the clarity of it. In other words, it's not easily confusable with other inyon, and it seems to be final. Shebazeh metaretz kol hakushiyas. But once you reach this higher idea, this more elevated clarity in the whole matter, then that pushes away all the kashas that he asks. He sees that if I hold that way, then this won't be a shaila, and this won't be a shaila, the things that we asked adkoi. However, ma'ayin yoiser, he pays much more deeper attention, ma'ayin yoiser, or mevatel hasoga ashniyo al yidei akushiyas shemoitze gam al hasoga. And then he says, well, I can't remain with this as the final opinion, because all of a sudden I found, even on that final opinion that I reach, on that grasp of the matter, I found some other kashiyas, from other sources, or from other sforas, from other ways of careful thinking in the matter. He produced me a new set of kashiyas on the finality that I had up to now. Basoga Shlishis. And then when he gets to the Asoga Shlishi, he thinks about that. The third one, he thinks carefully about that. And then he'll all of a sudden ask another kasha or another set of kashas even on that. Had Shenisho Hadova Behelem Vehester, until you reach a point where he says, he can't really figure the whole, he can't really come to a clear maskona bedova, and therefore it remains by him in a form of a, he says, I'm not really sure what is the finality here, and he remains in a way that the hasoga mufla etzloi hoinyan, it becomes wondrous by him, and as well known, the word mufla means hidden to a certain extent, as it were, above and beyond. How is it and what is it? Eich is the how and the what of it. So that sounds pretty. That sounds pretty depressing. I mean, that's for you guys. You all look how depressed some of the time. It's you've been going through the whole evening, worked at it so hard. You have so many shilas. You get to a point where all you got is kashia, and the whole emes of the Indian seems to be beyond you altogether. So the Rebbe said that's where he remains. he gets up to that point, and what you might say, he is takua, as they say in modern Hebrew. He's stuck. Says the Rebbe, however, chas v'sholem, shaloi nisho kain behelem. He doesn't stay with such a unclarity. Ki'im sha'ach hakol ha'lomes. After all of the hidings of these different kashiyas, they're like the coverings over, came from all the different kashiyas, ve'heder yedio, and his absence of any real knowledge at the end, him not really knowing where does it all lead, ultimately, is yovel asoga amit yisadova. Then eventually he comes to the grasping of the genuineness, the emeskite of the inyan, alidea yegia harbe ve'oinyan atoi. Shemamik es atzme, that he deepens himself. From the word oimek, which means deep. Ma'amik means to make deep, to deepen yourself. Ma'amik es atzme, be'etzem ha'inyan ba'amoche gedoyle be'yosa. With a profound, hamoche is the noun from ma'amik, with a making of profundity, more and more. Hari hu moitze asoge ha'amitiyas. Ba'oimeku pnimius ha'inyan eich umahu. Even though he was Nisha Behelem and he was Takua, he doesn't give up, but he re-goes over again, and he's Ma'amik is Atzmei, and with a tremendous profundity of mind. And then he finds the Asoga Amitias, and the Asoga Amitias is likewise in the Oimek and the Pnimis, in the profundity and the Pnimis of the matter. How it was previously hidden from him. He didn't know Eich Umahu. He didn't know what was the how and the what. So we could say that how and what are like what you might call kamus v'eichos. In other words, that Eich is more like the quality, the pnimis and the lookness of the inyan. Uma is like how it relates almost quantitatively to other inyanim. More like the more practical aspects of it. But that's the two ideas of Eiches v'kamus in their more abstract oifen. Ubezeh mamela soru kol ha'kushiyos v'alomes. Mamela over automatically, once he reaches this profundity, soru kol ha'kushiyos, all the kushiyos turn aside. They all had a good drop off. Soru, to turn away from here. They all turn away or drop off. Ve'alomes, and all the helems also turn away and drop off. Umeir oyer ha'emes be'yosa, and then the light of the truth is meir be'yosa zach u'bohir me'oid. And there's one other. The word zach means clean. Like we say, by the menorah shemen zay zach. But zach means that it has no peselis in it. Bahir means that it shines like the sunlight. Bahir, very bright and clear. Very, very much. So here we see that the mensch goes through several stages. First of all, he works very hard at different levels of understanding it, not being satisfied with any of them, even up to 3 or 4, as we see the hint here. That would seem to be the minimum, with many different kushiyas, and until he sort of says, can't we figure out what's really going on? And Dafki then he doesn't give up, but then we see that the Rebbe uses the word ma'amik, and he's ma'amik himself, and he goes into the union of ha'moka, profundity, depth. And then all of a sudden, then he sees, he finds moitze. Yeah, Sogar Amitis. He finds it. Yeah, then he knows Eichoma, pure, bright. So, what's the pitch line here? We have to understand what is the pitch line. Let's learn just another few words. Omna, Masha Goram Loy. What actually brought him? What was the cause? Sheyove al Tachlis Amitus Hadova, that he comes to the Tachlis. Well, Tachlis means the final aim, what you might call the emissary purpose, the emissary aim of the Amitius Hadova, what that we see the emissary learning is not just to know what the thing says, but what is the ultimate upshot, what is the purpose, what is the kavona, Badova. Tachlis Amitius Hadova, Kamoishuhu, Hein akushiyas v'ha'elomis davke. We see that what really brought him to this unbelievable new state, where he knows it in such a way that it becomes zach for his boy here, and emes for tachlis and all those inyonim. It was really the kashiyas and the ha'elomis. The im lo hoya miyageya es atzmi la'ayin bo'inin ula'achshoy. If he hadn't struggled himself, worked himself tremendously hard, la'ayin ba'inin ula'achshoy, and to ask kashiyas, hayonisha k'moisha hoya b'asokah rishon, he would have remained how he was, by the asokah rishon, she'ein ze amitias, that wasn't true anyway. When we say it wasn't false, but it wasn't the ultimate truth. Ki'im alidei akushiyas davke, al yedei zeh magia lo'ir amitius adora. He comes to the light of the amitius adora. And then we're going to see there's another mile and another inyan which is nifal al yedei de kushiyas. So we have to understand what as we said a minute ago is like the pitch line in this whole inyan. So we could say that the inyan that's well known, that from one yesh to another yesh, there has to be what's called a ayin be'emtza. Wherever you got one form of an existence, and you want to get to another form of existence, this one should produce literally another type of existence similar to itself, then there's got to be like a ayin in the middle. And that's what we find by the Eivishter, that the Eivishter, he's the Yesh or Amiti. In order that it should come about the Yesh Hanivra in the Olam Hanivroim, then in the middle you got the Indian of the Tzimtzum and so on, and that brings about the Indian of the Oyer, which is shot to the Elamus, and the Oyer is Ayin Lagabi the Atmas. It's a Indian from Ha'ora Bi'alma, that's only Ayin Lagabi, and that's what we mean, Yesh Mi. Ayin, when we say Yesh Mi Ayin, the Avish is the Emissar, he's the Emissar Yesh, how can you say Yesh Mi Ayin? Now, Kaviyochel, the actual bringing about of the Yesh is from a Zal level, the Maila, which is the Gabi Amitius Atmas, it's Ayin. And that's the Amitius are moving from Yesh to Yesh. There's an Ayin and an Ayin be'emt. So we could say, and there's odd camel dugmois was it in the Mittler Rebbe, we're just coming from Yud Kislev. The Mittler Rebbe's got in the famous document, the Shara Yichud, the Mittler Rebbe's got about 4 different mashalim, mushals, on this whole inyan of Miyesh Liyesh. He has to be an infant Ayin Be, has to be the infant Ayin Be'emta. So we could say that what here we got the inyan of the Torah has got a hasoga that wants the mensch to grasp. And so that's already the Gabi. Torah, that's already a certain prat in Torah, so that's a yesh, or it's the emissary yesh. Just like Elikus is the emissary yesh. And that's a yesh there which is nimshach mi inyan ha-Torah. Isn't it? What do you expect of me? I come all the way down when I don't believe that I'm in the best of health, betachlis. I come all the way down, and I mamish give him my time and my koyches that you guys should have some knowledge of what Chassidus is about. Yeah? So you do me the great favor, you come into the class, and then you do me even greater favor and you slow. Oh, that's a way to behave. Maybe what I'll do is I come in, I'll just lay myself down and chafetz shlaf, and everybody just go about his way. Now do me a favor and wake me up for Marav or something. They say about one of the great mashpiyim that he used to start off a Fabringer. He started me, and suddenly he just fall asleep. Well, become all the mashpiyim and sit wait for the wake. I don't do that to you guys. So anyway, the hasoga, how it is mitzad the Torah, that's the emes yesh. The hasoga going into the mansion, it should become part of him. He should become united with that. Yeah, that's another yesh. That's another form of existing. In the middle, it has to be an ayin. In other words, there's going to be like a break. Or we could say that the man's relationship to the Indian, the emes lamiti, when he ultimately grasps it, that's the emes yesh. And the way he is, he's a yesh that doesn't understand yet. In order to go from there to there, he's got to have like an ayin ba. He's got to have an ayin ba emtza. And what's that? He's got to come to the point where he says, Kilo, nela mimeni kolaini. How does he come to that? Yeah, he's got to be poil of his yes, that he becomes a ayin. That's the kushiyas and the yikia and the ribui. That's like the breaking of his yes. So all of a sudden he comes to a emes ayin. Oh, dafke almost. Yeah, the Eivish shows him that once he's come to a emes ayin, but you can't just say to the Eivish, sit down at the table and just say, oh yes, Eivish, here I am, I'm an ayin. You see, so just send me the emes yes, would you please? So how did you become that ayin? The day that you worked hard, the day the kushiyas with the stiras, you became an ayin. Oh, dafke yavot comes the emes yes. The new asoga amiti is. However, the Rebbe is maramas to another inyan, and that is what he calls ma'amik esatzmei v'amocha gedela b'yesa, and that's after he's already come to the point where he doesn't really understand. Begoli. So what's the significance for ma'amik esatzmei v'amocha gedela b'yesa, and then moitzei hasoga, he finds it. So you're all familiar with the Gemara, and I thought that everyone would jump up. It's one of the Yud Beis Pasiyikom. It's one of the Yud Beis Pasiyikom. But it's a Gemara. It's not a pasuk. It's a Gemara. Yogati u'matzasi. How does it say? Yogati u'matzasi al tamin. Lo yogati u'matzasi al tamin. Of yogati u'matzasi tamin. If you struggle very hard and you found means to understand the new inner that you couldn't understand, then you should believe him. We see that if you really struggle hard, then you don't just understand, but you find. Yogati matzasi. So the Rebbe, there's a whole piyuf in the Rebbe, but there come a piyumim in the Siches, where the Rebbe says that when you find something, that's like a new thing that also came via ayin. You're walking along, all of a sudden you find something. Yeah? You didn't prepare yourself for it, you know where it came from. It's what's called a matziyah. And a matziyah can be a whole new addition to the life of the moitzai, that he didn't really know where it came from, and he didn't really, lefi erech of his own koiches, put anything into it. All he had to do was go to the effort of packing it into his pocket, or bending down to pick it up. So like the Gemara brings a possibility. One guy saw the mitzvah before the other, but he was a bit slow and a bit balabatish. In the meantime, another guy came jumping, and he jumped down and got it before him. As who's really got the right to the mitzvah, the one who saw it first, or the one who actually got down and got at it? In other words, that there's an effort. Now you have to bend down and get it. And you have bizoris. Oh, you didn't really know you were going to have that, and you don't see to put anything into it. And that's the idea of a Matzia, meaning that a Matzia is a whole new Gilui Shalei Lefi Eretz Shelcha. So the Rebbe says in the second piece here, you'll notice that after he says Yenisha Behelem, and it seems to be Mufla, he said, oh, but then that's Dafki when you have to begin a new Inyan, and that's Mamik, you have to be Mikashi yourself by Hamoka Gedoilo, then you come to this Inyan from Moitza. And so the Alter Rebbe is Masbin, look what you tell in the place, that Dafki Lagabi Dadini from Matzia, you have to have what's called Das Nelam, he calls it the Alter Rebbe. You got to have a Iskashrus Neloma, mitzad the etzem of the nefesh, you makashi yourself, and that's the inyan of lahamik. Lahamik means to go deep into the inyan. So I mean, if you didn't really understand it, how can you go deep into it? Deepness, if is not so much a new appreciation in the zach. No, deepness is a deliberate act on the part of the nefesh that wants so much that inyan to bind itself over inseparably to the inyan, almost saying to the Eibishter, listen man, I'm sorry, I can't allow you to do it every time, boy. You understand, you just can't every night waltz in here and do things. It doesn't go that way. Yeah, you show the Eibishter and you indicate to him that you want this inyan so much that you've bound your whole self over to it. In other words, what you've had up till now, you bind yourself over. You didn't understand it, but you come the makusha in the zach, and you say that I'm not going to ever leave this until I really understand it. And the Alter Rebbe says, oh, that's called das nelam, that's like a hidden iskashus on the part of a yid, where he says to the Eivishtor, he says to the Torah, listen, I'm not going away from here until yeah, and that's the inyan of Hamoka. In other words, Hamoka is not a new thing. Hamoka is more like a desire on the part of the person, and a deep iskashus where he binds himself up to the inyan. And therefore, if you look in Perek Gimel, the Alter Rebbe says that the inyan of das, that's what he says in Tanya in Perek Gimel, the das hu inyan iskashras. So I mean, l'chera das is more than iskashras, but the poyel mamish of das is iskashras. In other words, what das does to you is that it binds you up, and you don't leave the inyan behind, and you live with the inyan until such time that it is meya by you, by even acher legamre. That's connected with the ayin be'emtza. That ayin be'emtza is the iskashras atzmis of the mensch in what we call ha'amoka. But if he didn't have with what to be mamik, then it doesn't help. You can't just sit down and say, oh yes, here I am, I'm being mamik myself. So then the Torah just says to you, Shalom Alisrael. Edifer. That's what the Rebbe is, Maram is, that after he says you reach that inyan of Helem Shemufle Etzla, he doesn't know where he's going from now. Well, then he says, no, Davke, he comes to Moitzei, that he finds. What finds is like a Matzia. You just find it sort of appears to you through your binding yourself over and committing yourself, but that's the inyan of Das. And that's the inyan of Hamoka, of yearning and asking for the real inyan, or that becomes depth. Depth means that you deepen yourself into the inyan. Edify, says the Rebbe Dafki, then it becomes clear and pure and like a bright candle burning, and then he says, ooh, why didn't I realize all this before? And then he sees how all the kashiyas weren't kashiyas, and he sees how mamela, all the things that look to be somewhat contradictory are not contradictory at all. On the contrary, they all fit into their right place. And he says, he'll be able to say, well, that inyan was really there, and this inyan over here appeared to be a kasha, but it's not, it's really talking about another. And he's able to sum up the whole relationship of this particular asoga to other asoga. And so the Rebbe said, if it hadn't been for the fact that he was busy, first of all, with the kashiyas, yeah, and he makes a tremendous effort to understand, then he would have just remained with the kasha, he would have remained with the hasoga how it was at the beginning. So we see that the ayin be'emtza here is the kashiyas. Yeah? The ayin be'emtza is like the tearing down each time of the building that he had mitzad the shleimus ayin. And that's an akuda of the kushiyas and the halamas and their stadium in the middle, what they like pull down each step, and they're like the ayin be'emta. However, that ayin is his own doing. He makes the ayin because he literally breaks himself and struggles with the kashiyas. We see that there's a tremendous smile in the Talmud Bavli, that Dafka Ali, they say you come to a new type of asogya. And that's what we're now going to say. Ki'im, some say, Ki'im, alidei akushiyas, Dafka alidei se, magia lo oir amitiyas hadova. He reaches the light of the emiskite of the zach. And he also said it's clear and pure like a pure candle. It's zachu bohir. So now it says that but for ulas hakushiyas levad. I'm sorry, he said, and furthermore there's another mile in the activity of the kashiyas. Levad mashal idea elam ve'ester magila oima pnimis aseichel. The mishum ze levad hare mikumokim misha sikle tei v'chorif yuchalove lo oima aseichel gam beliha lamas estate. So the Rebbe said that we're going to now deal with a new mile, or when I say an additional milah that we find in this whole pattern. He said, well, that's going to be apart from the fact that through all the Helen V'Esther of the Kashis, you come to the pneumius of the actual seichel, just a more pneumius of the understanding of the seichel. He said, if only for that, mishum zelavad, mikol mokim, misha sichli tei v'choriv, somebody's got a good, sharp mind right from the beginning, yuchul lov Elohim ha-seichel, gam b'li alon tzvestei. People are very bright, how they call it, bal kishreinas, like we saw in the previous drush at great length in Avom Zoki, that there's some people who are very gifted that they don't need to go through all the kashiyas, no, they just look at the Inyan and they just sort of get the main point right from the beginning. So the Rebbe said, if it was only just to reach the pneumius of the seichel and to reach the emissar seichel message of that particular hasogya, then that's what we mean by the Eimakul Pneumius. Then he said a man who's a big Baal Seichel with blessed, Kishrenas, he wouldn't need all the kashas, he would just be able to see it right from the beginning. The Rebbe says, Gambali Elomas, or be emes. The truth is, however, Alidei Helem Ve'ester Akushiyas Magil Maili Yesa Mitzad Koyach Oyer Choizer. שמגיע בכוח החוכמה הוא עצמי דווקא, מה שבבחינס אור יושע אינו נמשך משום. או כמו שנסבור לעיל בדרוש לפני זה in Avram Zoke. Right at the end of the Maimah, at considerable length, we discussed over there, and we made this point, that there can be somebody, he's a Baal Kishorein, and he's a benched thinker right from the beginning, got very sharp kishreinas. He can, without all the kashiyas, he can see what is the genuine correctness of that particular seichel. However, and we called that Ur Yosha, we said that was direct light from the powers of the nefesh going downwards towards the seichel and grasping it. And then we saw that the Indian of struggling with the thing and working on it with kashiyas, going and going one kasha to the other. We called that Oyer Choizer. What we saw about that in the Jerusalem, we learned much later in the Hemshech at Rosh Hashanah time. We saw the mile of Oyer Choizer compared to Oyer Yoshim. We brought several Mishalim in reference to that, and so on and so forth, in the Drush of Rosh Hashanah. Kadishat of Anei Rosh Hashanah, we saw about that.
In order to get to the first Hasaga, does he also still have, could it be that he also has to do the year to get to the first Hasaga?
Who, the Baal Seichel, the Baal Kishrenas?
I'm saying no.
Yeah. That's also part of the plan. But it's not the emissary Yagir, because there's a lot more to be done than that. You follow? But anything needs, in this whole Seder, needs an effort. The effort is not enough. You have to keep digging and digging for more power and more effort.
Even when he gets to the final Hasaga.
I know, when he gets to the final Hasaga, much once he gets to the final Hasaga, then in that particular inyan he's reached like a shleima. It's only that can then help him regarding other, you understand? That can then assist him and give him a new start in some other much higher like we see. But when the Rebbe finished the whole Emshech of Samech Vav, then about a year or two later he wrote the Emshech Vav Beis. The Rebbe said that the Emshech Vav Beis, even the Gabi Samech Vav, is a pillar, and sense deploys. That's what the Rebbe said in the famous year. Now we're dealing with a new point that the Baal Kishrenas, he can grasp everything right from the beginning when he get to the emissary message of the Seichel. So the Rebbe said that we pointed out in that Drush that nonetheless the person who works hard with all the kashyas, and maybe he's not blessed with such a kishoron, but he works very hard with all the kashyas, then he makes use of a power called Oyer Chayzer, returning light that's going back from Milmatala Maila. And like we saw in that Drush over there, Rosh Hashanah, Kodesh Ato, and the Drush Lifnei, we saw the whole Maila of Oyer Chayzer is tafka when it's like you've reached the end point and there's like a necessity to bounce back, as it were, with having come to a certain lowest of all point, and then there's a tremendous driving power created by the fact that the oil then returns back. And we saw that that's all Bepnimis saying. Well, I Bechitzenis, you don't notice that, but Bepnimis, that's the Nakuda, and that driving power going back, that spring back, which is called Oyer Chayzer, well, that brings to a much greater aliyah in the koyches of the nefesh, and then instead of just coming back to the start of everything in koyach ha-chochma, he goes into the inyan from koyach ha-chochma ha-ne'aloma. You remember we spoke at length over there in Roham Zokin, Bobby Yomim. He gets back to what we call the koyach ha-yuli ha-atzmi of chochma, even higher than the koyach ha-maskil, which we call koyach ha-chochma, the seichel ha-ne'alam, we call rayon. Through the inyan of the kushiyas, Mashek and the Baal Kishrenas, he goes into the inyan, albeit in a proper way and in a correct way. He doesn't reach the profundity, and like we pointed out over there, he doesn't so much reach that's in the Rebbe hinted here, the tachlis. What is the ultimate purpose of the whole inyan? And the zach ubohir ma'ui, this tremendous bright light of the inyan, he also doesn't reach that. That's precisely through the inyan of Chayzer, but that's another inyan which we're about to describe now. Over there in Avram Zokim, we didn't talk about the Zachu boy here, that wasn't our inyan so much. We just said he reaches the inyan of that Seichel, that's Kol in the Koyach HaYuli HaAtzmi of the Nefesh, which is a very high madrega, and from there he draws the Hasoga, and we saw that was Hasoga Shaloi Be'erah, because it comes from that which is B'derech Klau, Ne'elam, from Rov B'nai Adam. And therefore we saw that certain Chachamim that they know things in a way that ordinary people who are learning that in don't quite figure for where they're coming from. They talk in Oivan and they have such appreciation, which is in a very, very different Oivan than in inverted commas ordinary people, if there is such thing. So therefore, that was what we saw in the Drush that we learned, Shalifnei. Omno. However, what we're trying to say is, Yesh Bazeh Oid Maila Yesera Harbe. There's another tremendous Maila in the Yagiyas and the Kushiyas and the Stiras, B'derech Oyer Chayzer. There's another tremendous Maila, and that's what we've hinted at here. Mashal Idei Kushiyas, Hu Mavarer Asigim V'Apsoilas Sheba Seichel. Here's a new chiddush. Through this effort with the inyan of the Kushiyas, and dealing dafki, not like the Baal Kishrenas, but dafki going back by Chayzer, with effort and struggle, one kushya le'achrei hasheni, then you literally clarify and you purify that whole asoga from the sigim, from the little impure points. Sigim are like little, spots of impurity. Psoilus is like waste material almost. Psoilus means like the idea of something which is not really necessary for the emes. Sheba seichel. Ad sheyeta hadova muskal zach venoki beli shum ta'ariv psoilus klau. Until this whole idea, the muskal, comes out in such a way that it's pure and clean without any mixtures of psoilus at all. And Mamela, since that's the case, Meir b'zeh oyer elyon yoser. And Mamela, they can shine into that a much higher oyer from the mokir. Shanu reim basogas ezi inyan kashemak sheboy ezi kushiyas umatarit. He asks a lot of questions, but then he answers them. Nasets le bohir yoser hoyine. It becomes much more illuminated. It becomes, they call it shining by him. Umeya boy oyer yoser, and shines into it a new light. Imi yois, even though shalina teisiflei was eza oimek yoser. Even though he may not have come to any real additional profundity. In other words, he's reached the ultimate profundity. Through the whole Indian before the Kashiyas, he's reached the ultimate profundity. But by being makusha into the thing, binding himself over and asking even a further Kashya or further inyanim which seem to be Saisa, then that brings him to a new inyan of literally pure light and illumination in the etzem inyan itself, even though it may not have gone any deeper. It becomes much more illuminated and shining the day that he now, in face of the new oimik, he even asks a further question. He's mataret. And that's because the little impurities which are inside that seichel, it becomes shining and illuminated. It's in that same seichel. He hasn't gone any deeper, but it becomes more illuminated and lit up. So what does all that mean? What it means, it becomes more illuminated and lit up, and it's like more pure and shines pure. What do you mean by saying it has in itself sigim or perseilas? What is it in a musag, in a spiritual thing, like an idea, like a concept, a concept in Torah, a particular concept that he's already dealt with and he's spent a lot of time at it. And nonetheless you say that even after he's come to the evidence of oimek, like we saw in the previous Maimah, he may have come as far as you can go in the Koyachas Hanev. You can't go any higher and better than that. You've come to a tremendous correctness and gilui of the real purpose and the real of that asoga. Oh yes, you can. He said you can come to an even greater in that it becomes more purified and clean and shining and illuminated much more. He said that's an Indian noiser. That's an extra Indian. So the kushya that occurs is talking about kushyas. So the kushya that occurs to the intelligent reader is that if we're talking about that you've gone mamish into the koyach hayuli ha'atzmi of the nefesh, and you've gone into the biggest place in your nefesh to produce your new sichli, you can't go any higher than that. You're going to get deeper into the whole thing you're never going to get. That's it, kilu. Then what could you want more? And how is it shayach to say that where you get a seichel from that level, that a true adon of self sigim upah Pesela. I mean, what on earth are we talking about? That in a seichel comes from Amidius Atoiro, yeah, with the emes oimek of a kavona of a inen in Torah, and you get it from the koyach ha'lamayla me koyach ha'maskil, you get it in the koyach ha'yule atzmi from the nevish, and you say, oh, that's all gewaldig, that's all tremendous, but it's got a little bit of a shmektabik of Sigim and even Peselis. Peselis means like waste material almost. In it. What's it does? How is that child? Therefore he said there's another mile in the whole Indian from the and in the Indian from the going through all the Indian from Kushias and Tirutzim. And even when you reach the final point, you still ask Epsakilo, extra carrot, extra bureau, extra something. He said, why are you still not 100% restful? Because you know that deep inside there's this kilo impure material which still got to be cleaned out. And therefore, even after all that and all that chazara into the koyach ha'yule atzmi, you still got inside the etzim seichel itself, sigim upre, soilas, and you can clean them out. What's up? Sigim and soilas. In yonim from Torah. So therefore, the teretz is going to actually occur a bit later in the Maimon. When I said the teretz, then a biur is going to occur further on in the Maimon towards the end, which will make it clear further what is the kavana here. Even though the Rebbe doesn't go into it here, he doesn't really hint at where does that sigim of pseudus come from. Only considerably later in the Maimon does he throws some light where it might have come from. But Lefera, as conscientious Talmidim, we have to understand at every point, what direction are we going in? Then if you learn Geras HaKodesh in chapter 26, you learn over there that the Alter Rebbe brings it to be at the beginning of the famous Geras over there, he brings the Zohar Kodesh, where the Zohar Kodesh says that Kol Eid that were in the Golas, then there's the Shlit in the world of the Chet Eitzadas, and he says that that causes that even in Torah there's the yin of Kushia Misitra Dorah. He says the yin of Kashias really come because of the fact that there's a certain Helen V'Esther, the Klippers, over all in Yonim in Torah, and Biemas will only get rid of all that, he says, when Moshiach will come, V'yavo Ruchat Tumah Mina Oret, and the whole world and all the Lom De Torah and the whole Indian will only be Makabel only from the Eitz HaChaim, not from the Eitz HaDat. Then will be another Seder, and then he goes on to say, that there has to be this tremendous effort on the part of the Talmidei Chachamim. This Managon, he brings the whole mile of the Talmud Bavli, v'chuli. But that's also, doubtless, you might have heard or you might have been aware of, right? There's a famous biur from the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach when it came to Yud Kislev. We're still coming from Yud Kislev, and we're on the way to Yud Tes Kislev, which you know the famous principles. That the union of Yud Kislev is the how do you call it, the birthday of a chassid. You know, the Rebbe gave it over, the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach Tzkizot, in the name of the Alter Chassidim and the Rabbeim, that Yud Kislev is the birthday of a chassid, not just of any given chassid, but of a chassid, and that Yud Tes Kislev is the bris. Familiar with the famous Indian?
Yeah, like Krasik.
There's a famous,
Jennifer Bringer, Rabbi Krasik wished everybody happy birthday.
Rabbi Katz put it?
Rabbi Krasik.
Oh yeah.
He wished everybody happy birthday.
He said to everybody happy birthday. Very good. I'm pleased to hear it. And then the Rebbe said that Yud Tes Kislev is the bris. The famous Kashia, it's what they call a clutch Kashia. It's a little sort of, what they call a clutch Kashia. That there's 9 days. It used to be more than 8 days. The bris is on the 8th day. Yud Tes Kislev is the 9th day from Yud Kislev. So the Rebbe brought that down once in a Sikha. And the Rebbe said that's just a little clutch Kashia. So it's not Mavish 8 days, you're going into the 9th day. Of in Ruchnias, it's the Inif and the Yom HaBris. Is that Mela? the Inif and Yud Kislev must have a shaykhs, but where we're holding now. It's very fascinating that in a Sikha the Rebbe brings down that that's the whole Ina Mavur Behem Shel Samech Vav, the part of B'Sholem Nafshi. That it wasn't mean you get out B'Sholem. He said because the Indian from Torah without part of B'Sholem is all the struggle with all the Kushiyas, with all the Inyanim. He said a part of B'Sholem Nafshi means the Talmud Yerushalmi, but that means how everything is mitzad the Amitis Indian of Kilo a higher Madrega in Torah, and that's after you've been through all the struggle in how it is in Talmud Bavli and all the Inyanim and Aduas. Part of B'Sholem Nafshi is all these miles that are written here in Talmud. The Alter Mitzvah Rebbe and the Alter Rebbe they brought into the world that from now on everybody can learn, and as I even that he'll come through his effort to the Shleimus, both in the Pnimis V'Atzmis of the Koyches and Nefesh, and in the Inif and Behiras V'Chulu. That's a pshat part of B'Sholem Nafshi, and the Rebbe brings down this whole piece in Samech Vav. So Asher, that's not as Gacha Prati is. The pink when we're learning this particular Indian as Yud Kislev comes along, and we're between Yud Kislev and Yud Tes Kislev, and the Rebbe says that this Indian here is the Indian of part of B'Sholem Nafshi. Well, once again, we have to assume that everybody had his piles and not at least B'Pnimius, right? If not B'Chitanius. But anyway, that's as they state, Kacha Katu. So here we need to understand that what's this Indian of Sigim, of Pesailah, in the very, how do you call it, in the Etzem. Indian, we have to say that that's what the Alter Rebbe is, Maramas over there. And that's why Teres Achsidus is higher than the whole Golas. That's the famous beer, but again to Teres Achsidus. It's only the beginning of the Toya Meir Chaim Zoch. It's like the famous eating of the little things before Shabbos, eating the Machali Shabbos before Shabbos comes in, the famous Moshel Blair, the famous Indian. But Magen Avram brings down, the Alter Rebbe brings it in Shulchan Aruch. That's Indian on Fridays, before Shabbos, to be toyim a little bit of the Machali Shabbos, a bit from the fleis, and the cholon, the chayzit, and so on. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said that he never saw that minute Begashmias in Lubavitch. Begashmias, he never saw that many. People running around on Friday being told from the Machali Shabbos. He never saw that Begashmias. But, there's some Yidden who do it Begashmias. Gesundheit, Tovia Lehm, Bracha, Maruba, V'chule. But he said in Lubavitch it wasn't a custom in Gashmi. He said, but Baruch Miyas, it's a very, very beginning. In other words, that the whole Indian from Siddur, the whole Lubavitch is like tasting the Machali Shabbos before they actually came in, and that's the Indian of living with the Torah of Mashiach, even before Mashiach came. And so therefore, we're able through the Indian from Limud HaChassidus to hold by all these Inyanim B'Shleimus. Nonetheless, the Alter Rebbe explains it. What is the Indian before Teres or even after Teres Achsidus is still to clean up the what you might call the mopping up operations and so on and so forth. That there might be a little trace of Sigim and Pesailas left in some of the Musogim in Torah. So how does that get there? A thing that came down from Atzmis or Pnimis HaNefesh down into the Mensch. Sigim and Pesailas Padova. What's it doing? Elamai, mitzad the etzim inen of the fact that we're still begolas. Then there's a certain trace of how the shlita of the klippus b'zman golas, and particularly the eitz hadas toivora, or they cause that even in the highest inyonim, in the most delicate inyonim, there was a delicate mixture of what we might call toivo ra. So even though something mamish ra chas v'shom. It's not mamish evil in a hasoge in Torah, chas v'cholila. But bedachis, it's like a slight interference with the emes kavana, and even less than that. The Rebbe said it's like an interference with the oil. You understand the inner, but you don't see the unbelievable illumination of it, and you don't become lit up and illuminated in the full way, even though you got the emes hasoge. It says the Rebbe, the maila of this type of learning is that you come to the emesa uir, the behiras, and the zachas, which means purity But there's no sigim of pselas, meaning that you see the whole inyan mamish k'moshu betachas abehiras, and that lights up the world all around you. And Mamel gives you the courage to bring not only just proper understanding into the world, but to bring light. And you might say that's the difference between a chassid and somebody who didn't quite reach that madrega. Alidei, what he's betachlis aiskashis to the Rebbe. Then he brings down not only understanding into it, but he brings down light, lichtigkeit, and gets happy and lichtig everywhere. People sort of get hope and they get lit up and they start doing things and they because of the inner of that's called oil, illumination, lichtigkeit. So the same thing when a mensch understands that way, then he becomes different in his life. His whole life becomes an illuminator's life. He feels things differently, does things differently. And that's what the Rebbe means. You purify through the Yigiyah. Not only you come, because even if you come to the Shurish in Nefesh, higher than that you can't go. More deeper than that you can't go. But it may come out of there something which is still not illuminated because it's still in the Golas. It's not mamish the amitis hagula ba'isa haregya. And there's still a little trace of what you might call some little lack of purity and illumination in your understanding, even though you understand it rightly, absolutely. But you're not elevating the world, but tachlis with that in yet. How do you tell what you don't stop there, and you try even with that to go even deeper. Then you come to this Indian of purification. You drive all of those little sort of light helomas and these little sort of traces of lack of absolute illumination, and you drive them out, and then it becomes pure with zakba. And that's when you hear, I remember when the other, I used to hear, if I bring him from Rabbi, you just feel that the whole world was all of a sudden lit up, you could just feel. I remember, when I used to go to the Rebbe, and you'd hear, if I bring him from Rabbi, you just want to go out on the street and just light up the whole world. You could feel that this was the light, this was the illumination. It wasn't just a message, it was like lighting up the whole world. People would just know about it, they would see it, that's the only way you can go. And that's why it's so maddening. People who really, try to understand the Rebbe, how much can we really understand him? But those of us who try, and we try to become involved, and what the Rebbe said, it's so maddening when you see that so many people are just drifting, they haven't yet got the right message. They haven't really hopped what the Rebbe was saying. And therefore there's still a little trace of the Peselas in the world. Aber Bilti Shum Sofi. It's enough now that just a few of us, even one or two of us, through the Yishurim and Samech Vav, we come to the emes of illumination, the emes of Pnimius, of Behiras, that Omen Kein Yehirotzen, that will light up the world, that will show lichtigkeit. And therefore it's very interesting. Forgive me for saying, but sometimes when for holding you guys up, when you talk with somebody that's not really informed yet, and you mention something that the Rebbe said, and you say it just with an honesty, people say, oh, there's a slip, even if they don't admit it to you at that moment, but you can see that it's had that type of effect on them, that even though they may not say to you, but you can see that they've chopped a new angle. I was driving home with this taxi driver the other night, and I was talking about Mashiach. When we got out of the car, I said, "Treat him like his palel," and I paused for a minute, and he said, "B'shvila Mashiach." He said to me,
all right, that which it says, "Chasigim v'apsuas sheba seichel." This seichel, this is talking about the seichel that you're. This is
that he's reached the perfection. He's reached mitzad the nefesh and mitzad everything. Mitzad the ocheza, he's reached as high as you can go.
Is it talking about in general? You're in general, where meaning to say that all the shlusim that we inherited as balchuas from the world, if we deep really really hard in Torah, that will sort of clean it all up. Is it saying that also? Or is it just
and any not just in Torah, but be'ika in Torah, and that will light up how you understand the other inyanim which are slightly lower. You follow? And that's why we see the Rebbe, there was literally nothing that he didn't say, very illuminated things about. And people couldn't figure, where's he coming? How did he know that? Well, even when the Rebbe, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, when he had the heart attack, he started telling the doctors what they should do. He started saying to them that this and this was the approach under these circumstances. They used to say, where does he know this from? Who's that? And that's the stage that lights up everything. If you see, you think illuminating, he thinks it's illuminating.